I went to my daughter's house tonight with modest hopes, reconciliation, perhaps, and maybe a fleeting glimpse of her boyfriend's father, whose quiet charm had once caught my attention. I did not expect the evening to take the turn it did. The weather had other plans. Snow closed the roads, time stretched, and circumstances shifted in ways I never imagined. Now I am home, the house hushed and dim, while Chris and Evan, both very much grown, are asleep upstairs in my king bed, wrapped in my sheets as though they belong there. I slipped away quietly, heart still racing, to sit with my thoughts and admit what I can barely believe myself. I have lived a full life, or so I thought. Yet nothing in my past compares to the way I was held tonight, the way attention was given freely, generously, without hesitation. I felt seen, cherished, and awakened in ways I did not know were still possible. Every touch felt deliberate, every moment unhurried, as though time itself had softened to make room for something entirely new. What surprises me most is not the boldness of what happened, but the clarity it left behind. I feel alive, warm, restless, and undeniably aware of what I now crave. The house is quiet, the night still heavy with snow, and yet my body and mind are anything but at rest. I find myself already longing for what comes next. Merry Christmas to me. You stand before the full-length mirror in your bedroom, smoothing the front of the soft emerald wrap dress you chose for today. It fits you perfectly, graceful and confident, quiet proof of the years you've invested in yourself. The early mornings at yoga, the long hikes, the steady discipline of strength training over the past decade have all shaped not just your body, but your resolve. Your skin still carries its natural glow. Your hair falls in loose waves, catching the light just so. The faint lines at the corners of your eyes don't diminish you, they add depth, character, and a story worth telling. They speak of laughter, endurance, and wisdom earned the hard way. You smile at your reflection, a small, private smile meant only for you. This moment is yours. You didn't arrive here by accident, and you didn't wait for permission. After everything you've endured, everything you've learned, you finally understand how to choose yourself. And you know, without doubt, that you earned this. 10 years ago, your world fractured the moment your husband died without warning. Grief arrived all at once, loud, heavy, and unrelenting. The children, already halfway out the door into their own lives, watched you struggle and seemed to interpret your pain as failure. To them, your unraveling felt like a betrayal. They blamed you for the quiet that settled into the house, for the bills you scrambled to keep up with, for not being the unshakable pillar they believed a parent should always be. There was no grace for the exhaustion, no patience for the nights when sorrow pressed too hard to carry alone. Your daughter, in particular, was sharp and unyielding. She accused you of being self-centered for grieving too openly, for taking too long to recover, for selling the boat her father loved because it was too painful and too expensive to keep. She mistook survival for surrender. You still remember her words, delivered with the certainty only youth can summon, "You're just giving up on us." But you weren't giving up. You were learning how to breathe in a life that had been violently altered. You were doing the only thing you knew how to do, standing back up in pieces, trying to hold everything together with hands that were shaking, heartbroken, and human. But they were grown. You had already poured the best years of your life into raising them, school plays and soccer practices, late-night talks, and endless loads of laundry. You showed up, again and again, in ways that mattered. And then they left, as they were meant to, and suddenly you were alone in a house full of echoes and memories. You did not owe them perpetual perfection. You did not owe them the performance of endless strength. What you owed, finally, was yourself a chance to breathe. So you took it. You traveled alone to places you had always dreamed of seeing. You enrolled in classes, challenged your mind, and discovered new interests. You made new friends who knew you not only as a mother, but as a whole person. You dated a little, not chasing anything permanent, just enough to remind yourself that you were still seen, still wanted, still alive in your own skin. You rebuilt your body and your confidence one careful choice at a time. Nothing rushed. Nothing reckless. Just steady, intentional acts of self-respect. And yes, there were nights when loneliness settled in heavily, when the quiet felt too loud and the absence too sharp. But even then, you refused to make yourself smaller just to keep someone else comfortable. You refused to disappear again for the sake of expectation. You chose yourself not out of selfishness, but out of survival. Out of truth. Out of the deep understanding that a woman who has given so much is allowed, at last, to live fully for herself. Then, 3 months ago, your daughter called. Not the usual clipped check-in filled with polite distance, but a real conversation, the kind that lingers. Her voice was hesitant, carefully measured, as if she were stepping onto unfamiliar ground. She apologized, awkwardly and without flourish, for how cruel she had been after her father died. She admitted she had been thinking about family lately, turning old memories over in her mind. She said she missed you. And then, almost casually, she invited you to Christmas Eve dinner at the new house she shares with her boyfriend. You would be lying if you said you weren't surprised. She had always been the stubborn one, the child who rolled her eyes at advice, who pushed back against boundaries, who stormed out of rooms convinced she knew better. The sharp edges between you had felt permanent once, carved deeper by grief and misunderstanding. Yet here she was, reaching out. People do change. Sometimes slowly, sometimes all at once. Maybe adulthood had softened her in ways time eventually softens most of us. Maybe living her own life had taught her how complicated love can be, how heavy loss feels when it settles in your own chest. Maybe she finally understood that grief isn't a choice, and that falling apart is not the same as giving up. Whatever the reason, the call felt like an opening, a small, fragile bridge between what had been broken and what might still be mended.